The deadline directive, strategic time constraints. While setting a firm deadline can be an effective negotiation strategy, it requires careful consideration of timing, the nature of the relationship with the other party, and the potential risks involved. Balancing firmness with fairness and maintaining open communication are key to ensuring that this tactic contributes positively to the negotiation process. Insisting on a firm deadline for the acceptance of an offer in negotiations is a strategy that can significantly influence the outcome of the negotiation process. Here's a detailed exploration of this tactic. Purpose of setting a firm deadline. Creates urgency. Setting a deadline creates a sense of urgency, compelling the other party to make a decision within a specified time frame. This urgency can prevent prolonged negotiations and indecision. Tests seriousness. A deadline can be a way to test the seriousness and commitment of the other party. If they are genuinely interested, they are more likely to respond within the given time frame. Control over negotiation. By setting a deadline, you exert a degree of control over the negotiation process. It's a way to prevent the negotiation from stalling or dragging on indefinitely. Implementing the deadline strategy. Clear communication. Communicate the deadline clearly and unambiguously. Ensure that the other party understands the deadline and the reasons behind it. Reasonable time frame. Set a realistic and reasonable deadline. An unrealistically short deadline might be seen as pressure tactics or even a bluff, which could backfire. Explain consequences. Clearly state the consequences of not responding by the deadline, such as the withdrawal of the offer. Flexibility. While firmness is key, also be somewhat flexible. If the other party requests a slight extension for a valid reason, consider it to maintain goodwill. Psychological impact. Decision-making pressure. Deadlines can create psychological pressure, which might lead to quicker decision-making. However, this pressure can also cause stress or resistance, depending on how it's perceived. Perception of scarcity. A deadline can create a perception of scarcity or a limited time opportunity, which can make the offer more attractive. Risks and considerations. Risk of rejection. There's always a risk that the other party might reject the offer, especially if they perceive the deadline as too aggressive. Damaging relationships. If not handled diplomatically, deadlines can strain relationships. The other party might feel cornered or manipulated, which can be counterproductive in the long term. Being prepared to walk away. Be prepared to follow through if the deadline passes without acceptance. Failing to enforce your own deadline can undermine your credibility. Ethical considerations. Avoid coercion. Ensure that the deadline does not cross into coercion. The other party should have the freedom to make a decision without feeling unduly pressured. Transparency. Be transparent about why the deadline is being imposed. For instance, it might be due to business needs, market conditions, or time constraints. After the deadline. Post-deadline negotiation. If the deadline passes without acceptance, decide whether to renegotiate, extend the deadline, or withdraw the offer. Feedback and learning. Analyze the effectiveness of the deadline tactic. Consider how it was perceived and whether it achieved the desired outcome.